Hey, what's up, guys? This is Drew at The Path. I'm the service manager here and also this week's guest on the podcast. On this week's episode, Ak and I talk about some of the perks of being bike commuters. Tani and I discuss some of the finer points of brake bleeding and service, and we introduce our new online special. Thanks for tuning in this week. Let's roll out.
The Path.
The Pathbikeshop.
The show was on.
I had the biggest smile on my face.
Taking it to a whole new level.
Pitch and bike shred simulator.
If you have like a angry style.
Yeah, work hard, play hard.
We've had some good times.
It's October 29th, 2025. Welcome to the Path Podcast. Pretty stoked to be here with Ak, and I've been trying forever to get Drew on the show. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome, Drew.
So Drew works here in the shop. For those who haven't met him, he is often service riding or coordinating the tech force in the back, and he does an awesome job, and we're stoked to have him here.
Thanks, Tony.
So, real quick, flats or clips?
Flats.
Chamois or no?
No chamois.
Carry a bag or on-bike storage?
A little bit of both.
Bar width?
760.
Ooh. Tire pressure?
23 in the back, 20 in the front.
Ooh. Inserts?
Historically, yes, but currently, no.
Crank length?
170.
Bar rise?
More is better, I think, but mostly 35.
Knee pads?
Yes.
Elbow pads?
No.
Full face or half shell?
Half shell.
Hand guards?
No.
Grips thick or thin?
I've got both. Let's go thick.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that's a good way to just get started knowing Drew here on the show. Now we'll get into some news. We have some trail work days coming up. Laguna Canyon Foundation is putting on some trail work. I have that in my notes here somewhere. That'd be pretty cool if I had found those. Let's see. So I'm going to switch gears to get that.
I got it.
You got it.
I'm looking for it.
Cool. Laguna or Five Oaks in Aliso trail work at 8 a.m. Laguna Canyon Foundation. You can sign up on the Laguna Canyon Foundation website, and that's November 8th. Five Oaks is a fun trail.
Yeah.
I think trail work is a great way to get to know a trail a little better, too, and to get to know some friends a little better.
We had a tiny bit of rain, so it'll probably be pretty dry still.
November 22nd in Stair Steps is another Laguna Canyon Foundation option. 8 a.m. again. Sign up on Laguna Canyon Foundation website.
Right.
Doing trail work is awesome. It makes you an awesome person. You should do it.
There's also a Thursday, November 6th event going on.
Right.
It's a Trail Stewardship, Laguna Ridge, Laguna Coast Foundation, Coast Film and Music Festival.
Cool.
That sounds pretty cool, too. Yeah.
Music festival.
Music Festival.
I wonder who's playing.
On a Thursday?
Big Bend staging area, Big Bend, Laguna Beach, California. Thursday, November 6th. I guess so. It's interesting. I wonder if I'm looking at the right year.
At
No,
the bottom of Big
it
Bend,
is.
there's going to be a music festival?
November 25th. Yeah, November 2025. Sure is. Yep. Cool, all kinds of cool. So check out the lagunacanyon.org. You probably just said that for more events. What have you?
Yep. GCKHS distributors are going out of business.
Man, that's a bummer.
That used to be one of my main suppliers.
End of an era.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what KHS stands for?
Knowledge, health, strength.
That's right.
Good call. I wouldn't have thought of that unless you asked. I'm glad you asked.
K is for knowledge.
Yeah. No?
No, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I've had known the brand for a decade before someone told me that, and it's just a nice little
I
tidbit
didn't know
trivia.
that. Cool. So what impact does that have for the shop?
I think they had kind of slowly become less and less relevant, which is, sadly why they're one of the... We're losing businesses in this industry. It's a hard thing to see, hard thing to be around. It's a bummer. Hope most of us can make it.
Hopefully.
I have a little bit of news. So I'm introducing a new thing for a while to the show where we have a deal, but it's also kind of like so Kona Wawas. These are the pedals I ride.
Oh yeah.
They're $65. I think they're maybe the biggest pedals we have on the floor, and they have a really nice bevel that slides off rocks, and they're pretty durable. And to me, they're my favorite shape. They're the ones that feel the best to me. They're the ones that are on my bike. You guys?
They are super, like, even though they're quote composite, they are super durable. Yeah, I think I've only seen one pedal get broken, but I'm thinking that any alloy pedal would have gotten broken on that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'd say it's one of the best values on the market.
Yeah, I've seen more than one break. Sometimes the pins will tear through them, but one of the things that you guys had mentioned that I think is so bomber about them is the bearing they use is just massive. A lot of pedals just have a little tiny bushing in there or a couple little baby bearings in there, and this thing's got like a linkage bearing in it, and they're super bomber result, and they're also super easy to service. If you guys put $65 into them, 2, 3, 5 years into it, put a bearing in it. It's cheap, works out well.
So here's the deal. The first 20 riders who go to our web store and purchase an order of $50 or more, put some Wawas in your cart, and they'll be free if you enter the promo code PATHPOD.
That's awesome.
First 20.
First 20, go.
Buy $50 of anything, get free $65 pedals that I think we all have on our bikes here at this table.
Yep.
So
Is that only for the larger size or the smaller size also?
any composite Wawa. So there's color options, there's size options.
Don't shy away from the small ones. I have regular to larger size feet, and I prefer the littler ones, the wee-wees.
So those you'll get less pedal strikes.
More ground clearance. Honestly, I just like the way they feel. They kind of like nest in my shoe. I tend to ride the pedal on like the arch of my foot, and I feel like you just like lock in with those versus like your ball of your foot and the arch hanging on the same spot.
Yep. Yep.
I do have those on my commuter bike, the wee-wees.
Yeah.
Great.
I like them. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Fantastic. And if you have tinier feet, yeah, they work out fantastic. That's a great deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Free pedals. Who
Free
doesn't need
pedals.
an extra set of flat pedals?
Heck
And
yeah.
maybe you just want to try flat pedals, or maybe you need an extra set,
Yep.
or maybe
Maybe
yours aren't as good as these.
Right. Maybe you need a set of pedals and you just got a free jersey with it or whatever, you know.
Also, did we talk about how, let's see, who else just went away? Oh, gosh. YT.
YT.
So YT Industries is gone. That's also sad. A lot of our customers have YT. We service a lot of YT.
Yep. They're not out of San Clemente, but they do have a pretty big San Clemente presence.
I think
I thought they closed that location
they did. They closed everything.
Yeah.
They're gone.
for
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
YT's out of business.
Oh my gosh, I thought they were still restructuring.
They were trying to pull it off. Yeah.
Bummer to see another brand lost.
I do think there's a little bit of something to be learned here. Because YT, maybe 5 years ago, there was a lot of murmuring in the bicycle retail world that all of us were going to go out of business because of YT.
And
Did
Canyon.
you hear that?
YT and Canyon, right?
I feel like Canyon was probably the bigger driver at the time, for at least as I remember it.
Canyon and YT, yeah. Which I don't think Canyon's really proving that their model works for them either.
Well, and I don't think they're quite as mountain bike focused as YT was.
Yeah.
It seemed like that's all YT did, and did a good job of it for a while, arguably.
But I think there was an experiment, and I think the hypothesis was that a brand could do a better job selling and servicing their bikes than a bike shop, than maybe the average bike shop. And I think we're saying that maybe that holds not to be true. And I think a lot of us who work in bike shops knew that there's more going on in the bike shop than they're realizing.
Totally. I think it's a common misconception. This is an easy thing that everyone can handle and everyone can open a bike store, but there's so much nuance and behind the scenes stuff that is not obvious until you've done it for.
And there are some pretty big brands who really want to emulate YT, and maybe they should take note, right? Like
Truly.
who think that they can do a better job with their product by going around bike shops and selling direct to consumers. And I'm not even advocating against brands selling direct to consumers in partnership with their dealers and with a dealer-centric sales plan.
Right.
Right.
Well, I think it shows that just having the same parts at a lower price point is not the be all end all of the business. You have to have support and customer relations beyond that. And that's a huge investment for any company to make. And so just because you can hit a price point that other brands can't hit doesn't mean you're going to retain customers or offer good support over the long term.
Right. Yeah. I meant to start off more with your history. How long have you been mountain biking? How long? No, let's go back. You started on BMX?
I started riding BMX maybe 2000 or 99. I thought I was a skateboarder, but what I really meant is I pushed my skateboard around the cul-de-sac for a while. I met a buddy of mine who rode BMX, and we hodgepodged together this. It was like a 20-inch frame. We put 16-inch coaster brake wheels on, so the pedals were just inches off the ground, and we thought we were super cool.
You had some tricks?
I crashed a lot for sure. And slowly I got better. Yeah, by the time I stopped riding BMX, seriously, gosh, I can't even put a pin on when that was. I was a decent rider. I had probably more bike control than I had tricks, so I was pretty easy at handling the bike and riding anything in front of me. But I wasn't a threat to any competition riders or anything.
More street and park?
Yeah, more street. I grew up in Central Texas, and at the time there weren't a bunch of skate parks around like California had, so we were mostly riding curbs, or riding the stairs at the high school, riding the ledges or the handrails. And there were a couple of skate parks that started popping up in Austin. So I have a little bit of everything under my belt, including dirt jumps. But I'd say the majority of the time we're riding, curbs, ledges, stairs, rails, that kind of stuff.
Nice. And then you got into mountain biking.
I did. I started working at a bike store in 2007. And as you do in a bike store, you kind of just start collecting bikes and bike parts. Almost everybody at the shop I worked with rode mountain bikes. They were all excited to get me out there. And I didn't dive in head first, but I started kind of dabbling in it. At the time, my finances didn't afford buying like awesome mountain bikes. So I was piecing together rigid bikes and 26-inch stuff. But maybe 2010 or 2011 was when I really took the plunge and really got more into big bikes instead of little bikes.
Yeah.
And that was road and mountain and, mixed terrain riding at the time.
And one of the things I really respect about you is how often you ride your bike to work.
Yes. That actually probably goes back to riding in elementary school. We moved to the suburbs of Austin, and my next door neighbor, their father was a huge cyclist, and his kids rode to school, which was a few miles from us. And of course I started riding to school with them. And honestly, I've never looked back. I've commuted by bike to every shop I've worked at, not every day, but more often than not. And I mean, to me, it's like, I don't want to say I hate driving a car, but the difference between riding your bike to work and sitting in traffic is so night and day that I think everybody ought to try to live close to work and ride their bike if they can, because you get to work feeling energized and excited, and you're not bitter and frustrated with traffic, and you kind of leave all that work anxiety or frustration on the road on the way home, and you just get home like ready to engage with your friends and your family, and you're in a much better mood than if you had beat your hand on the steering wheel for the last hour and a half in traffic on the 91. And that's something that people really do every day, and like it turns out you don't have to do that.
It's true,
but it is
it doesn't hurt when it's a nice cruise through Tustin.
Yeah, right, in your sandals, the wind blowing in your ponytail. I mean, it all adds up, right? It's worth it.
And even if your commute is not that far, the fact around here that you can beat yourself home on a bicycle versus driving home in that traffic.
Yeah.
Like I'm a bike commuter as well, and same thing. It's 7 miles for me, and anytime I have to drive home, I'm just telling myself, yep, I could get home in this exact same time riding a bike.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm the only one here who's been regularly driving a car to work.
I think there's mitigating factors for yourself.
I also used to and will again ride my bike to work a lot.
So can we talk a little bit about your commuter bike that you're on now?
We can. It's a Raleigh Talus 29. This is a new bike in 2010 that I sold to my dad when I was at the very first bike shop I was at. I don't know how deep you guys want to go. It was a 3x9 Dior bike with a Dart 3 on the front.
Awesome.
And my dad rode this not out of this thing. I'm not kidding. He rode it almost every day. He was an active runner and bike rider as well, and he rode it for many years. And he passed away, and I inherited it, and I essentially just stripped it down because I didn't want to have, I was a bike shop employee. I had to have a cool bike. I couldn't have some 3x9 Dior rig. But it's lived a bunch of lives. Right now, it's an upright bike with fenders, dynamo lights, front and rear, big basket, all kind of bags to carry snacks and change of clothes and that kind of stuff to work. It's got a dropper post on it. I don't think I'll own a bike again without a dropper post. But since I've owned it, again, it was new in 2010. It's got the frame and the crank arms are the original components,
Oh, nice.
and that's all that's left on it. Everything else has been changed.
It's not every day you see a dropper post combined with a Brooks. Is that a Brooks leather saddle?
It's a Brooks leather saddle. Hashtag Brooks on a dropper. If you're on Instagram, view the hashtag. And it's just a kind of an amalgamation of stuff that I outgrew on my mountain bikes and wanted to put on a bike that still needed some love. But I was telling Tani and Ak before the show, if my living quarters are burning down, although I have a bunch of nice bikes and a bunch of different styles, this is the bike I'd grab. Maybe because it's my dad's old bike, and maybe because I have literally thousands and thousands of miles in this thing. I ride it every single day, and it's just, I love it.
I like the maybe walk us through your fender game.
So they're Velo Orange. I think they're 65 millimeter fenders.
Okay.
They're currently housing a 2.0 Conti tire on there. I mounted the fenders myself. They very seldom come off the bike, but I have done some like bike packing, mountain biking on it. So it does sometimes get 2.4 tires on there. I've got some custom fender flaps that I made out of stairwell tread, like the rubber stairwell tread you might put on some stairs at a business or whatever. And I just kind of traced a pattern onto it that looked right, and I cut it out and I fastened it to them, and they're going on 5 years. I've got some reflective tape on the back of one of them.
What's the fastener? Or how'd you connect them?
I just drilled a hole in the bottom of the fender and just used some bottle cage hardware and some leather washers. So if you have it all metal, it can get loose and rattle. So the leather washers kind of like tie everything together. And those leather washers are part of the kit that Velo Orange sells for mounting the fender. One of the shops I worked at was a huge touring and commuter bike shop, and we just had so many like bits and bobs and rack hardware and fittings, and so it was an easy way for me to just like, use little washers and stuff we had laying around to make a custom setup.
I really like the fender extenders, the custom fender extensions. That I'm sure helps keep road gunk and water and everything from even better than the fenders.
And it looks cool too.
Right.
And I, thankfully I've never lived somewhere where it rains a whole bunch, but when you do decide to ride to work after a rain shower, like if it's pouring rain, I might drive my car. I'm proud to say that. But if you're like, here in California, it's dewy out and kind of wet on the roads a lot of mornings, and you'd be surprised how wet your shoes and your pant legs can get just from water off the front tires. Maybe even in addition to that, I know we're getting derailed on fender talk in a mountain bike podcast, but it really preserves your drivetrain. I mean, the chain will last you like literally 1,000 miles more because it's not getting dust and debris and water kicked up on it from every rotation of that wheel. And again, they look cool too. So get some fender flaps, especially if you listen where it's wet. Your buddies will thank you.
See, since I'm a bike commuter, I don't mind going down this path. So your drivetrain, it's a one by, but you've got like an old school XX derailleur.
Thank you, Ak. I sure do. That's courtesy of Ak's parts bin that he dropped off at the shop thinking nobody could ever want this old junk. And I thought, wow, this is a diamond in the rough. I got to have it. Again, I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but I remember when I was coming off that 3x9 drivetrain, it was SRAM 10-speed, and that was like all the shop I worked at was all anybody wanted to ride. For sure. Was SRAM 10-speed. And I remember asking the service manager, it's like, man, I'm thinking about buying the X5 shifter. They're like $30. And he's like, X5? Like, no, dude, get the X9. That's all you want to get. It's the only one to get. And that X9 shifter has been on there for over 10 years. It feels so cherry. I did have an X9 derailleur that matched it that was not in bad shape, worked awesome. But then Ak dropped off this like baller XX derailleur with the carbon cage and these Hope pulleys on it. And, I just had stars in my eyes. So on the bike it went. So 10-speed SRAM, X9 shifter, XX derailleur. It's got an 11 to 40 cassette in the back, 36 tooth ring up front. It's everything you need for a commuter.
Okay, so we've already spent a lot of time on this, but I got to ask, can you take us through some of the flair on the bike?
Sure. I don't know if there's a lot of flair on the bike, but it does have a spoke card in the front. Shout out Grupo Relaxo, Sativa Rollers, some friends of mine in the Austin, Texas area. Awesome group of riders, really talented riders of all styles. They take an annual trip to the West Texas desert every year to do a big camping and mountain bike ride. And the spoke card I have is a hallmark from that. It's got a pig on wheels on one side and a snail on wheels on the other. Both have little bloodshot eyes. I think one side says packing a spare, and one side says no hurries, no worries, maybe. I can't see the side right now. It's always rolling when I'm writing it, so I don't often read it. I also have a little dangler off the back of my seat. Yep. It's another kind of bloodshot-eyed theme here. Traffic cone with legs. I bought it. There's a mechanic and owner of a shop in Seattle. His Instagram handle is Road Holes. The shop's called Rodriguez Bikes. This is like his little vibe and crew, and he's like a pro level mechanic who's like constantly like, hey, this derailleur's broken. Well, guess what? We drilled out the hole. We tapped it for a larger bolt. It's working again. Like nothing's trash for those guys, right? And I just think that's such a cool vibe. And so I kicked him like $5 for a little dangler. Nice. And it's been on there for a few years now.
Very cool. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
How many bike shops have you worked at?
I think this is the 5th. Very first shop I was at, 2007, was Buck's Bikes. Shout out Peter Buck, super guy. Almost everybody there took me under their wing. I was just a little grom. I barely could, true a wheel on my BMX bike or put the chain back on. And everyone there took the time to teach me how to engage with customers, be a mechanic, be a shop employee, be proactive, find work to do. I was there for 9 years. So shout out Buck's Bikes. Then I was at The Peddler. Shout out AJ Camp, super guy, super close friend of mine. Probably what I, for a long time, consider my home shop, even when I moved out of Austin, because I just had such good memories there. Many of the staff I work with are still there. So shout out to shops that retain employees and take care of their staff. Big hallmark of the path here for sure. A lot of people have been here for a long time. After The Peddler, I did a brief stint in Houston at West End Bikes. Shout out Daniel Murphy, the owner there, super guy. That shop has a reputation, especially in Southeast Texas, for putting on bike races. They were the mountain bike shop in Texas for a long time. A lot of really talented staff have gone through there. Then I had a brief stint in Santa Monica at the Bike Center. Kind of really cool shop, more of a commuter shop, and a kind of a rental shop. So not really the vibe of the other shops I've been at, but it was a good stopgap, and that's where I was at for a while. And they were really generous with me. And then I'm here at The Path. So this is the 5th shop I've been at since 2007.
And you've been here for a year and a half, 2 years?
I think it'll be 2 years in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been working in shops for 18 years.
Yep. I keep thinking, is it 20 yet? And very nearly.
Wow.
And honestly, I kind of don't see myself doing anything else. If you haven't worked in a bike store, this is like a really interesting intersection of mechanical work, social work, helping people understand their bikes. I mean, there's so many little facets that you don't really understand until you've done this for a while. I think people think like, I'm just going to show up at the bike store and sell bikes and talk bikes all day long. And like, that is a big part of it. But a lot of it is also helping customers understand their bikes, helping customers understand why their bike is acting up. There's so much that goes into it. And honestly, it's dependent on the shop. Some shops I've worked at, you do a lot of social work with, people who need a little bit of help getting their bike fixed so they can ride to work, and they're kind of between paychecks or whatever, so sometimes you're like trying to figure out how to make this happen for the person on the budget that they want. Again, to me, it's like a really interesting intersection of retail and engaging with the public.
Yeah.
More than any other industry, I have to imagine.
Totally. You give people a ton of helpful information. People are always coming in with different needs, and like you're just dispensing all day like helpful information. Some stuff has to come up over and over again.
Sure, I'm on the spot, so I'm struggling to come up with details here. But I think that's something I've learned at all the shops I've been at, and I think what you a lot of times see, and I think I maybe noticed it hearing my coworkers talk to customers, and I would hear them using bike industry jargon and like giving a concise explanation of the situation. But then I would see the customers kind of have this like glazed over look in their eyes, like they didn't really grasp what was being delivered to them. And for better or worse, I can be really verbose, as you guys now know on the podcast. But I think a big part of it is helping, instead of just saying like your chain's worn out, it's just much to fix it. It's like helping them come to the understanding of why this thing worn out, why it wore out, what they can do to mitigate that in the future, or how they can diagnose these things on their own. So it does sometimes take more time to walk these people through these things, but I think everyone really, really appreciates it. And I know that this shop and other shops I've worked at have gained lifelong customers because they just feel like they're being seen for the first time. They're being explained to for the first time. I don't know if you guys can see our setup here with the service riding station. Big kudos to Tani and the team for setting the shop up like it is. I love riding service for this shop because when people come in, they've had experiences where another shop said like, it needs a tune-up, it's $500. And they're like bewildered, like, okay, let's do a tune-up, and then like get their bike back and they don't even really know what work was done. So I think a big part of this service riding station and how I like to write service is, we have an interview with every customer and it's like, what's going on with the bike? What are you experiencing on your last couple of rides? And they may not have a lot of details, but many times they do. And then using their feedback plus our expertise, we're going through the bike tip to tail and saying like, hey, I noticed you said your brakes feel bad. And it's not just that they need a bleed. It's, it's all this other little minutia that goes alongside it, right? And I think we can guide people towards buying service from us and they feel confident, they know that their issue is being addressed, and they may understand their bike a lot better when they get back out to the trail and are more tuned in to issues that are arising, and they bring it to us before it's a big issue next time.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, it's definitely a really tough job riding service. There's so many little things in every bike to catch and see. And I think our goal is always to catch everything up front. I know that none of the technicians in the back like to reach out to a customer after the fact and say like, hey man, we notice it actually needs this too, right? We all want to just catch that up front every time. And to our credit, we're really good about that. But some of these jobs, you just don't know all the little pieces of it until you have it apart. Or if you've done it 20 times and know that this is a potential issue with this individual product that you might catch ahead of time.
Yeah. So what can we do to make our chains last longer, since you brought it up?
Put on custom-made fenders.
Custom-made fenders
and extensions.
I was just having a discussion with a customer earlier today. Their e-bike drivetrain was super worn out, and I was explaining that it needs all this kind of stuff, and they were a little bit taken aback. They were like, well, I just put some of the stuff on last year. Why is it already worn out? And through our discussion, they were telling me that they're lubing their chain before every ride. And I think a lot of people think, hey, that's best practice. Let's get this thing cleaned up, lubed up. I'm hitting the trails right now. The biggest thing you do to prolong your drivetrain is a clean drivetrain. And the biggest thing for me to keep the drivetrain running clean is to wipe off the dust and dirt and grit after a ride, apply the chain lubrication after the ride. And I don't even think it needs to be done every ride. I just wait till my chain sounds dry or squeaky. Then I'll get home from that ride. I'll wipe off the excess dust, dirt, and grit to the best of my ability. Usually I'll spray some isopropyl on a rag, wipe it in a couple directions. Then I'll lube the chain, pedal it for a moment to expel the excess, wipe off the excess. And by the time I go for my next ride, that lubricant has set up. It's not wet. It's not sticky. So when I get out to our super dusty trails here, I have a lot less adhesion of contaminants on the drivetrain. And that to me is like the key to running your drivetrain longer.
So if you lube right before the ride, it might still be wet, which is going to collect more dirt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, I that's probably better than not lubing at all. But I think the best practice is after the ride. And if you're really trying to goad me into it, Tani, I think the best practice is strip your chain of the factory oil, do an immersion wax, and you'll have, not only will you not be cleaning and lubing your drivetrain after rides, I'll get me like a month on an immersion wax before my chain starts sounding bad. And if you believe the data that I've read, shout out zerofrictioncycling.au, I think, you could literally save thousands of dollars over the life of your drivetrain because that wax just seals it. No dust, no dirt, no grit sticks to it. You don't have to do that. We really like using the Squirt wax lube in store. It's the same process as applying any other lube with maybe a little bit more cleaning on your very first application. But I'm a strong believer that wax is the solution, especially here in Southern California where it's super dusty. I'm not even kidding. You can literally save thousands of dollars. When a new cassette might be $250 to $500, if you can get 2,500 more miles out of that thing, that's literally money you save not buying a cassette a whole nother time.
And your bike was quieter and smoother the whole time.
And your mechanic was appreciating when you brought the bike in and the drivetrain wasn't filthy and nasty and they didn't have to spend 20 minutes cleaning your chain in the parts washer.
I think you might have just decided that we're going to start offering a hot wax service.
Come visit me at the shop. Let's wax your chain.
Seriously, we've been talking about it for a while, but since you put it that way, I think we're going to have to do it.
I'm not kidding. It rules.
And as far as lubing the chain right before the ride, I think maybe some lubes are better for that than others. Personally, I would say your like Teflon-based dry lube is a good choice for that because it's generally kind of like carried by like maybe alcohol or something, and it dries really fast and just carries the Teflon to the stuff. I think that's not a great lube choice. in general because it washes off really easy and isn't very thick and doesn't do much to protect the chain. But if you really need to put something on right before the ride, at least that won't collect dust much.
100%.
So yeah, I think that's a great topic. I think Drew and I were recently involved in a situation in the shop that I think sort of illustrates just the sort of stuff that we're working through. So one of Drew's jobs is to help coordinate kind of the standards, like if one tech has a better solution than another, like let's get them all on the same page, and if so forth and so on, right? Like
Definitely.
And recently I started noticing more and more that certain techs kept having the master cylinders on brakes open with either bleed cups on them or a rag on them while they were changing brake pads.
That's true.
And so we got kind of into that, and that led us to all kinds of questions. Like, is it okay to top off a brake with the bleed block out and the piston somewhat advanced? And who would you do that for and why? And how often? So the reason that they're doing that,
on some systems, I don't know if it's okay to say any names, but on some systems, through a variety of situations, the system could be slightly overfilled. That could have just been a natural occurrence if the system absorbed moisture from the environment, or if the system collected a bunch of dust, dirt, and grit that is then entering the system when you push the pistons back in. Maybe we kind of got ahead of ourselves. We're talking about, hey, the customer came in, wants to put some new brake pads in the bike. The brake pads are super worn out. The bleed feels pretty good. Let's just push these pistons back in so we have room for the new pads. We'll get everything lined up. Not often, but always, not always, but often, if you just push those pistons back in willy-nilly, you could damage the internals. Some brakes have a thin, flexible rubber bladder in the master cylinder, and if that system's already overfilled for a variety of reasons, if you just shove those pistons back home, suddenly that bladder can burst, and all of a sudden now you have a leaky master. So that's kind of how we got on this discussion. I
think for our customers who change their own brake pads, it's Shimano and Magura primarily that this is something we've seen an issue with. And I think if you push the pistons back gently, it's usually okay.
And trust your hand. Like if you feel like, man, this thing is really sticky, I'm going to give it the beans. Like, don't do that. If it feels sticky, just pause for a minute and think again.
And the other time we would see this is the brakes are rubbing because the pistons are too advanced and there's not enough space between the rotors and the pads, right?
Right.
And so we're trying to push the pistons back in, and maybe there's too much resistance, and we're like, all right, we're going to open up the master cylinder. And then, we asked some of the technical people at Shimano, and they said that it actually might be best practices to do that. And essentially we're like kind of like thinking we might just ask all our techs to always do that when they push pistons back on certain brake rounds. But I think it's one of those, like, the user's manual doesn't say to do that.
That's right. The user manual doesn't always say that.
Or does it ever? I don't think I've ever seen it in a user's manual.
When it came up, I pulled the Shimano documentation just to make sure that we weren't, not doing it when we need to or doing it when we shouldn't need to. And the manual really just says push the pistons back in.
Right.
And I think this is maybe a facet of working with a really talented shop like we have here. Our technicians have been doing this for a long time, and they see probably more brake bleeds come through their stand in a week than many shops might see in a month. I mean, this is all we do here is nice high-end mountain bikes. I shouldn't say that, but that's a lot of what we do here, excuse me. And so these guys have sometimes developed tips and tricks through their own experiences and conversation with other pro-level mechanics that they know that may give them slightly more repeatable results or slightly better results, even if it's not in the official documentation. Having said that, I did reach out to the Southern California Shimano tech rep, and he concurred and said, hey, although it doesn't say it in the manual, we do find that the best practice a lot of times is to at least crack the bleed screw open so that if there's excess moisture or air on the line, it's got a place to escape before the sensitive surfaces are damaged.
Well, and it's also, then it comes back to this question. So you mentioned a couple ways that pushing the pistons back could cause blowing that seal. And one of them is that somewhere along the line, a tech advanced the pistons a little bit more after the bleed block was out and topped off the master cylinder. Right. And there's a few reasons why a tech might do that. Usually it's because the rider said they wanted like a touchier brake feel, right? And is that wrong? Is it right? It's technically not how you're supposed to do it, right? Like that's not what the manual says to do, right?
I don't want to call it a hack. I mean, I guess you could, but I think that's just a technique that some riders and mechanics have adopted to get the lever feel that they want.
It's a way to get what a customer's asking for. And it's also a way to potentially set the next person who's going to replace the pads up to blow that piston seal or that master cylinder seal, right? So that's part of what we're talking about here is if no one ever does that, this is less of a conversation. We still have the situation with hydroscopic and other situations that kind of expand the fluid in the system. But I do think a lot of the reason that this has to be done is because someone, quote unquote, either you could say they overfilled the system or you could say that they did something to tune it for a specific rider's desire. Right. Like I'm not saying it's exactly wrong, but it's outside of protocol and it creates potential other problems down the road. And it's something we occasionally do. I'm not saying never do it. Sure. Right. Like, so I think that's part of the conversation. And I think it's also like when you replace 10, maybe, I don't know how many brake pad replacements we do a week, a month, but we do enough that if this happens one time out of 100, it's a big deal to us. Right. So that's another part of why we're talking about this.
It's true. And I think the mechanics in the back are so invested in making sure everyone's bike feels like they would want their bike to feel that if something goes sideways, they're bummed. You know, nobody wants to have a ticket go up in flames because something unforeseen happened. And now we're calling the customer back and like, hey, we're trying to get some parts for this brake that broke. It really wasn't anything we could have foreseen. We're just doing the normal process. And all of a sudden we have a problem on our hands,
But our techs gave us some really good feedback in discussing this. And there was one thing in particular that really stood out to me that was consistent from a lot of the techs. And it was more when you're getting new pads, maybe every other time you get new pads, you should be getting a brake bleed.
For sure. I mean, I wouldn't say that most riders are blowing through multiple sets of pads a year. Maybe some e-bike riders who are just smashing all the time. But it's just a reminder, you know, annually bleed these things. Every system needs to be bled. Every system inherits moisture and debris, or not moisture, excuse me. There's always gunk and grit and dirt that gets inside these things. So getting fresh oil, better consistent performance, better feel. And that was something we talked about. You know, it's like, hey, if we see a customer come in here and their rotors are smoked and the pads are super worn out, we could just sell a pad replace, but the customer is probably going to be better off with a bleed. They're going to be happier with the way the brake feels. They're going to have more consistent performance. And the difference in price is not eye-watering by any means.
That was actually an interesting side point that got made is like, you do have to take the brake pads out to bleed it. So if you buy a brake bleed, you don't have to pay for your brake pad replacement.
It's already covered.
Which means that the difference in price between a brake bleed and a brake pad replacement at the path is like $25 or something.
I think it's 30, but pretty close. Yeah.
It's something that if I think about it, it's like
so worth it.
For an extra $30, I can get a brake bleed. I think every other time I get my pads done.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, to me, the brakes are like no nonsense. You want that bike to stop, especially when the trails around here are steep and dusty and loose. Like, that's not a place to cut corners. If it's like, hey, man, should I get my brake split or service my fork? Do the brakes. You need those things to stop you on the trail. And don't neglect your fork either, but, like, it's mission critical to have good brakes on a bike.
And I think everyone has gone past we've seen a lot of people go past the service interval on brakes, but you're supposed to bleed them like every year.
Yeah, for sure, especially a DOT system.
Yeah, especially a DOT system. So I think to some degree we're sort of band-aiding people who should be getting brake bleeds is part of why we have to do this.
Right. And maybe, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but SRAM has transitioned most of their brakes over to mineral oil these days. And part of the design cue for that was we know our riders are not servicing their existing brakes often enough. And we're hearing reports of poor feeling brakes and failures on brakes. And it's not because it's a fault of the design, it's because the product hasn't been kept up with. And what they determined was that mineral oil systems can go way past those intervals with less degradation relative to a DOT system. So it's not that you should blow past your service intervals at all, but if you do neglect to do it, your brake will likely perform and feel more consistent relative to that DOT system that you left it or neglected it for the same time frame.
Totally. Yeah. I wonder what the Maven brake bleed interval is. I'm looking it up. You might know.
It might honestly be every 2 years. I may be way off base for this, and I'm embarrassed I don't have the manual
every
in front of me.
2 years, it looks like. Yeah. Which is, I don't think most people are bleeding their brakes every 2 years.
But you should be. And again, I think I don't want to say it depends on the rider because I don't necessarily think it does, but like every rider should be considering a brake bleed every year. And I think this may be I may get off on a tangent here, but I think that part of the conversation that is not had often enough is post-sale support and taking care of your bike that you invested in. If you put $5,000 into a bike, say you put $10,000 into a bike, that comes with upkeep, right? That bike doesn't live forever. I had a nice customer, regular customer of ours, a couple months back. He was taken aback at how much labor we quoted to like totally refresh his bike. And he said like, man, maybe instead of doing this, I'm just going to buy another bike. And it's like, well, dude, that same labor I just quoted you is going to be present next year. You're going to ride the same bike next year. Like you're not absolving yourself of this labor. You're offsetting it for another year, but it's going to come around again. Like,
did I catch that they were impressed with the difference when they got it back, or was that part of the story?
We didn't actually pull the trigger on all of the services that we had quoted. And I think this is not uncommon. A lot of times we want to overturn every stone and make sure we're checking every little facet of that. And customers just have to make a judgment call on their budget. So we did a lot of work for this customer's bike, not necessarily everything that we may have seen or suggested, but they were doing it in stages, right? They wanted to knock out the most important stuff first. We're going to come back to me in a month or two for that. But I think that the result was they continued to be happy with the bike they had because it was riding noticeably better. And that saved them from buying another $5,000 bike because they already had a cool kick-ass bike that they were stoked on. They were just taken aback that it needed service. And I think that is a conversation that a lot of the brands don't really want to bring up and say, like, your bike needs regular service. And I think the onus is on us as a shop to lead customers to that conclusion because every bike needs service.
It's like a car.
Totally.
Like, why would we think it's any different?
Well, and I to use a car analogy, I talk about fork service as like an oil change. It's like, hey, we're not solving an issue. The fork is not broken or not functioning properly, but like you got to replace that oil filter and the oil on the inside. I'm talking about the wiper seals and the bath oil. And it does change how your fork rides. But I think a lot of people are under the perception like, hey, it still feels pretty good. Why are we doing $150 worth of labor on this thing?
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, your car's still driving to the grocery store just fine, but you wouldn't dare neglect the oil change for 10,000 miles because you're going to wear that thing out.
The whole thing where like almost everyone sort of feels like their car drives better after an oil change, but it probably doesn't.
I wouldn't know. I ride my bike to work.
But I definitely think your fork feels better after an oil change. For sure, like noticeably better.
Definitely.
Even if you think it already feels okay.
Right. And I think people lose sight of that. It's like the performance degrades slowly enough that when you finally get back on this thing after, one of our techs totally refreshes it, people are riding faster, they're riding with more control, they're more stoked on the bike. And I think, that's definitely perceivable. It's slick and it's moving and it's not all sticky and gummy. And you're not scratching your stanchions either. So service your forks and bleed your brakes.
I'm gonna change to riding for a minute because one of my favorite little stories is the story where the line came out, "This is mountain biking."
That's right. It was in April of last year. I've been here for 4 months, I guess. And everyone here is super nice. Many of our staff, kind of took me under their wing and thought like, this guy doesn't even know how to ride a mountain bike. He's just been riding bikes in the woods for the last 10 years. Because in Central Texas, it's hilly, but it's not mountainous. And I have been riding around here on our at the time, Dawn Patrol ride a lot. Our coworker, Jeff, who's been on the podcast several times, he and I share the same days off. And he was like, giving me like, took me under his wing and showed me all the cool trails in town. And, kind of even gave me some, he wouldn't say like use your brakes here or unweight here, but he kind of taught me how to ride some of these trails that are much more technical and demanding than some of the stuff I'd grown up riding. Anyways, Jeff and Brian, Eric Bruner, who's been on the show, a couple of other people as well were planning to ride to the top of Santiago Peak. Mm-hmm. And I kind of got roped in and it was a super cool ride in every way. I almost bonked on the way up. It's like a super long climb. My longest climb up to that point might have been like 20 minutes, and we're climbing for like 2 or 3 hours or something. I forget exactly how long.
The biggest climb in your old area was probably like 300 feet of elevation change or something.
Maybe not even.
Yeah, and I think that ride probably had like 5,000 feet of elevation change.
It was over 5,000. And, I don't want to say we went through all these zones. Like you didn't hit the Alpine zone and this zone and that zone, but like you kind of have this like change as you come from the bottom up Holy Gym through like denser wooded areas, and you kind of break out of the trees in the slightly less dense, more sparsely populated areas. But then what really floored me is we hit snow. Like it's April in Southern California. We're riding up to the peak of a mountain, and I'm already like buzzing off of this. And then we're like, there's snow on the ground, and we rode through snow for like, I don't know how long, but it was several miles. And I was like, honestly, I was like pretty wiped at this point. So I was thinking like, oh man, I'm gonna have to walk through the snow. Like I can't pedal through this kind of thing. But we made it to the top, which was epic, And And I remember like Brian filtered water for us on the way up, which I thought was like, I'd never done that in a ride before. So it was super cool. There was a couple points where me and a couple other riders were like, man, I'm kind of wiped. We may just head back to the car. And like everyone was like, no, dude, we're rallying. Let's do this. We get up there. We got to the peak. And then this is where the quote came from. We started going down Upper Joplin in the snow. I'm following Bruner and Jeff. And I'm just like, my face hurts from grinning so much. I'm just having the best time. I'm ripping a snow mountain bike ride. I've never done that before. I know we have like at least 30 minutes or an hour of descending in front of us. And I was just beside myself. And I'm like hooting and hollering. And I was yelling like, this is mountain biking, you know, because like up until that point, I'd just been riding bikes in the woods. So this was a totally different experience for me. And I was like a kid, you know, I'm 37, I think. So, you know, I was back to being 14 on a BMX bike, hitting the spine at the skate park for the first time, thinking like, I'm totally trying something new. My buddies are here with me. They're all stoked with me. Honestly, it was probably the highlight ride since I've been in Orange County. And I've done a bunch of really cool rides since I've been here. But that one to me, it's top of the pile for sure.
That story really captures the spirit of like some of my favorite things about mountain biking and some of my favorite mountain bike memories.
Totally. Like to me, it's what I first loved about riding BMX. Like you're just mobbing around with your friends, having fun, having a laugh. You're looking at cool stuff. You're going cool places. You're just kind of out exploring, right? And I think mountain biking is just like the big BMX version of that. You're out in the woods. You're out climbing up something cool. You're about to roll off a big rock. You're about to hit a jump. And like it has so many parallels to growing up riding BMX. But it's just epic, you know, and it's mountain biking.
There's been some talk lately. Some people are mobilizing a real effort to bring Joplin back. I hope they pull it off.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I hope all those trails open back up. I know that's one of the things I was kind of crestfallen when the fire hit last year, because all those trails that I had only really ridden a handful of times, there's just a wealth of awesome riding around here that you kind of just end up like bouncing around, riding different places, or you just end up riding the same stuff you always do. A lot of people will tease me about the trails I like to ride, but being able to go to these different places is always exciting and enticing. And you try to like make a plan for your buddy, like, hey, we're going to go ride this place this weekend. And having all that stuff just go right off the menu after it was just presented to me was such a bummer for sure.
Yeah.
It has made a number of us ride the other parts of the Santa Anas that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise ridden.
Totally.
And I think it's really opened a lot of cool avenues and trails up as well.
Yep. To your point, you know, like all these trails are new to me essentially, but even some of the stuff that we're now riding all the time in the Santa Anas has gotten so much work in the last year.
Right.
And it's kind of cool because it seemed like a lot of those trails were just, people weren't going there because you'd ride other stuff.
Right.
Totally. Two Monkeys is awesome. That's one of the ones that seems to have become kind of the go-tos with the loss of Trabuco and Holy Jim and Joplin and
right. Yeah, and even onto the other side, some of the trails on the Corona side, I feel like they are getting more work and care after a while.
Totally.
Yeah, and those are getting ridden a bit more too, which is fantastic.
And San Juan also we lost. Did you ever ride San Juan?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, that's gone for now, I think.
Yeah.
Shout out to everyone who's building trails in the Santa Ana and keeping those things rolling. Really appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yes, and trail workers everywhere.
Thank you.
Right.
Not just the Santa Anas.
But for us, the Santa Anas.
Yeah.
Like we're the ones benefiting from that.
Right.
So special thanks.
And it's like, to me, it's like epic backcountry riding that the parking lot is like right there. Like it feels like you're way out there doing some really cool, epic,
so
14er. And it's like, oh, I can see the parking lot. It's like kind of like right over there. You kind of can't see it, but we know it's right there. But to me, it's like, it just feels super cool.
Well,
I was out there
for sure.
You know, I was with a friend just before the show eating some tacos and looking at those mountains. And they were like, look at the mountains. And they're like, are those mountains? I was like, oh, those are mountains. And it's pretty cool because like you can pedal from suburbia, almost sea level, right up into these mountains that are real mountains. And then you're overlooking, you can see the view. There's spots where you can pretty much see LA,
Riverside, Elsinore,
Laguna,
Catalina, San Clemente.
You can see kind of 360 degrees of Southern California.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane. And sometimes you're above the clouds. And you got to treat them like mountains, too, because there's a tendency to be like, oh, it's just Orange County.
Right.
But, like, the weather can change fast up there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And if you get stuck in the, I did an up and over ride this past weekend by myself, and conceptually I knew it was going to be a long ride, and went up and dropped down on the other side. And when I got down to the other side, I was like, oh yeah, this is a big ride, because what you have to come back on, and it gets to what you're saying, Tani, is you can easily get out there thinking like, oh, it's right here in Orange County. And then when you're into a canyon or you've dropped down a certain trail and you're like, oh man, that is a long ride back to Main Divide.
It is. And if you let Jeff Miller pull you on some of these rides, everything is just around the corner. You're almost there. You finished the ride already.
One more climb.
And
last climb.
Exactly. I took a ride with Jeff on the Santa Anas, and, anyways, he goaded me into another trail. And when we got back to the parking lot, I just collapsed. And I was on the hero's journey. There was a point where I thought, there's no way I'm making this. And then, to Jeff's credit, he buoyed me up, and I rallied, and I got back to the parking lot feeling like a new person who was totally wiped and had to lay on the ground in the dust for 30 minutes before I can get back in the car and drive home.
Should we do a couple listener questions?
Sure.
Okay. Did you get any?
I didn't get any.
Okay, I got two. We posted these. We posted an invitation to ask 2 questions just a couple hours ago, so we didn't have much time.
Send them in for next time, though.
Yeah. So the first one is from Ryan, who's an awesome regular rider in the shop and supporter of the path for many years. And he says, flour or corn?
I don't want to make any enemies in the podcast, but flour tortilla for pretty much everything. I'll eat corn if I'm eating like some nice street tacos, but if I'm making something at home, or I'm getting flour, guys. That's what it comes down to.
And then he says, haha, just kidding. What is the most frequent service-related item that you hear about in the shop?
Tani and I were talking about this before the podcast started, and honestly, I was trying to pull up reports in the point of sale software to see. I hate to cheat on this one, but I think it's got to be drivetrain and brakes. Everyone is thinking like, hey, my drivetrain's making some noise. It's not shifting super hot. What's going on with that? Or it's my brakes are rubbing. My brakes don't feel strong. We get a lot of people coming and saying like, hey, I want to get my fork service, my shock service, but like everybody has a drivetrain issue. Everybody has brake noise. So that's essentially every repair that comes to the shop probably could use brake and drivetrain work, even if the customer is not approving it at the time. There's always something to refine on those.
I agree. It's drivetrain, and this is what I think. A kind of alarming number of you out there in the world have something wrong with your bike, and it's just not bothering you enough to take it to the bike shop, right?
Let one of our mechanics test ride it. They'll find what's wrong with it.
Maybe you know some of the things and maybe you don't, but there are things probably wrong with your bike, right? But there's a breaking point where you take it to the shop, and if you can't get into all the gears, or if your gears skip, for most different people have different breaking points, but for almost every rider, that's a breaking point.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you got to pedal the thing. If it's not working doing that, you're not even on a bike ride at that point.
I think we got a ton of diagnose my sound, my creak, my groan.
That's true, and that's a tough one. I think it's so dusty here that stuff just gets everywhere. And honestly, for listeners who are bringing your bikes to us, if you have a noise or an issue, be really cognizant of when it happens. If you have any physical sensations with it, like you feel something in your feet or your hands, you guys are on the bikes way more than we are, right? So if you can just condense like, hey, it's my right foot at the bottom of the pedal stroke every time, I'm out of the saddle, I'm going up a hill, all that stuff leads us to this issue so much quicker than this abstract, like, it makes a creak. And it's like, okay,
totally.
we're going to get there. We're motivated, but like, I'm gonna have to play with this thing for an hour and take it halfway apart to get there. But if you say like, hey man, the sensation's always at this moment, and it's accompanied with this noise and these situations and this noise in those situations, it can steer us there much quicker. We do this all the time, so we're really good at it, but your feedback is super helpful. I can't stress that enough. If you have an issue with your bike, try to like think about it, what exactly is happening, when it's happening, what scenario is going on, and feed that to me on the check-in so we can just get there right then, right there.
Like some of the questions that I hear asked all the time, is it on every pedal stroke? Is it on both sides?
Is it when you're standing only? Is it when you're descending or climbing? Like if you just stand up on the bike and start like bouncing through your suspension, is that making the noise? Is it only when you're pedaling it? I mean, we could be here all day talking about this kind of stuff.
Finding the creek.
It's honestly, this shop, I've worked a lot of bike shops, obviously, or a few bike shops, and I've been in this for a long time, but this our clientele here are really talented riders on really nice bikes. And it was intimidating for me initially to do some of the service riding because you got to catch this stuff, right? And these guys ride these bikes hard. And if you don't nail it the first time, they're going to come back and, the experience isn't as awesome as if you did nail it the first time. So I think I was initially really intimidated by it and have worked through many of these with our clients and our staff. We're really good at this stuff, guys. If you have a creak or an issue, figure out what you can feed us that information on, and we will fix it.
Awesome. You ready for the next one?
Sure.
This is from Mike. You guys know Mike. Do you feel like there are concerns the industry should address regarding sustainability with e-bikes? I struggle with the idea that my carbon e-bike with a Fazua motor could one day soon be totally obsolete because no other motor could be bolted to my bike. When the motor dies and the company isn't there for warranty support, I'm cooked.
That's a great point, and it's definitely a concern. I'll say, first and foremost, many carbon bikes are repairable. That stuff can be fixed. I don't think that's advertised enough in the industry, but you can fix a carbon bike a lot of times. Fazua is a brand that we find pretty easy to work with. They're now owned by Porsche, I believe. So they have some bigger financial backing. Some of the other big players in the industry, Shimano and Bosch, those are big international companies. Now, if you buy some fly-by-night internet e-bike, you may have a total paperweight in a couple of years. So I think to me, that is a reason to invest your money in a platform and a product that has big post-sale support. To me, that's the number one thing I'm thinking about when I'm buying an e-bike beyond, does it fit me? Does it ride well? Does it have the specs and the features that I want? How am I going to be able to take care of this thing moving forward? I don't have the answer to all Mike's questions, but I would say the bike industry in general could do a little bit more to be sustainable. But also, like, if that motor dies, it's all recyclable. They're going to recycle that stuff. Let's get it back in the recycling facility. They'll tear that thing apart. Even the lithium-ion batteries, we do e-bike battery recycling here through specific partners who pay to have the service taken care of. So if you bring me your Amazon e-bike, I'm not going to recycle the battery for you because we can't be sure it's not going to burn our building down, and the facility I'm sending it to can't be sure of that either. So invest in a platform that has good post-sale support from a reputable vendor. But I think that's just also the nature of the bike industry. These things are a little bit consumable. You're going to wear out tires. Those aren't really recyclable. So plan smart. Buy a bike that's going to last a while and take care of it when you're doing it.
I have a couple thoughts. So we do send batteries back for recycling. But as far as I know, as an industry, we haven't quite developed a process for recycling them. So every one of us who bought an e-bike paid $15 into that. If you bought it from the Path, we paid it for you. So there's a system in place to get the batteries gathered for recycling, and I think there may be some recycling happening, but I don't think we're like scaled up to actually do the recycling yet. Maybe that's old news. Maybe someone could let me know that the batteries are actually being recycled now.
They're being recycled.
Yeah,
I read an interesting article on the Radavist. I think it was maybe Josh Weinberg or Travis Engel who wrote the article. This was maybe last year. There's a facility in Nevada that recycles all the batteries for the e-bikes.
Awesome. That's good news.
The brand that works it is called Call to Recycle. And the article is pretty cool. It talks about how it breaks it down into different materials, where these things go. I don't recall the specifics, but it was insightful. If you're interested in it, e-bike battery recycling on the Radavist.
I'm glad I said that because I'm glad to stand corrected and happy. Like, happy to be wrong on this one, like in a big way.
Well, and you might imagine a lot of these batteries don't get recycled because people aren't following the processes to do it,
Yes.
So if you have an e-bike from a reputable vendor, you can find a list of partners that are participating on the Call to Recycle website. Bring me the battery. You've already paid for it. We don't charge you for it. Just bring it to me. We'll take care of it. We want to protect the world, so let's do it.
Yep. And then Mike, I think, had this concern of like, he still wants to ride the bike, but he can't get a battery or motor. And I think that's a valid concern. But a couple things about that. So Fazua is still selling bikes and speccing bikes with that motor, which makes me think they're going to be supporting it for probably at least 3 to 5 more years. I've never known Mike to have a bike for more than a couple of years, so that's probably an exaggeration. I'm sure he has some bikes from back in the GT days still. But
maybe he could just convert that bike to a manual bike.
I really doubt that 5 years from now that bike's still going to be exciting to him, and a bike he wants to keep like putting time in, even spending his time riding, let alone putting money into, is my guess. Because if you look at a bike from 2020 and ask Mike if he'd want to ride it, it's just like maybe.
I guess that question also has the geometry and bike progression leveled off a little bit. But I want to go back to what Ox said a minute ago, turning it into an analog bike. Tani and I were looking at this right before the podcast. There's a company, I saw the article on Pink Bike recently, where you pull the motor and the battery and the harness out, and you bolt in this just like bracket that you put your cranks into. And so it turns any e-bike into a pedal bike. You just
Crank
pull that.
E.
Crank E. Nice.
And this is one of those ideas that was conceptualized at the Path a long time ago.
You're always ahead of the curve, Tani.
It wasn't me in this particular case. I think it was Jake and some of the other techs were talking about this.
Right.
But yeah, we have a lot of people here who have a lot of insight. But yeah, I think that's another answer is some of these bikes might get converted to analog. And I wouldn't be that surprised also if we see some conversion brackets come to the market to where you could convert that bike to, say, Bosch or also we don't know that Fuzua won't stick to that mount pattern with their next generation of lightweight motors. I'm not saying they will, but they might. So that would extend the service cycle of that product if they did.
Totally.
They kind of have done that on the batteries.
Right.
Because they have the new one out, right?
Right.
Is it a 480 now?
480 versus 430. Yep. So you can convert your existing Fuzua 430 into a 480 watt-hour battery.
Just fits in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think they're running a promo to do that at a discounted rate.
I think so. Yep.
I'm
not sure how long that's going to go for, but
I have all the notes written down on the service computer, but I'm not there right now.
yeah, it's for a limited time. And it's both for the removable battery as well as the non-removable battery.
Even the removable, the same exact dimensions?
I think so.
Sick.
Were you just total tangent, but were you in the room when the Brian from Bosch was saying that a lot of top DH pros are running anti-lock brakes?
Brian from Bosch was here maybe a month ago doing a really cool and insightful tech clinic for our technicians in the back, helping us further refine our Bosch processes, which are already as good as anybody's, it feels like. And he was bragging about their new ABS system. And I think many of our staff are really talented riders, and I think we're all kind of sneering like, man, we all know how to use our brakes. And Brian was just like, no, like this is way cooler than you think it is. It's way better than you expect. And he was having a story about riding in like wet conditions on slick roots and rocks and like trying to get the front wheel to slide out and lose traction. And he was struggling too.
And he was claiming that the pros just have faster times.
Right. And these are the guys who know how to use their brakes better than anybody, or know how not to use their brakes really so they can be fast. But using it in certain spots controlled, they have a lot better control, I guess, with the analog brake.
I'm really curious to try it. I'm really curious to see if it's going to be on all of our bikes someday.
I'm excited to try it.
As far as I know, motocrossers aren't running analog brakes yet, but I'm off the back on that info too. I'd be curious to know about that. Yeah. Then I have this other question. Does that mean if we wanted to, we could go wireless braking?
We don't want to.
No?
No. Definitely not. I'm not trusting a Bluetooth signal to stop me as I'm flying down Diablo into Santa Ana's.
Okay, but if you have anti-lock braking, have you already taken that leap of faith? I'm not sure if you have or haven't, but I think maybe you have.
Honestly, I don't understand the system very well because I haven't actually played with it in person yet, but I think it just reads how the rotor is moving through the caliper at what rate, and if it stops or if the tire stops moving. So you still have the same hydraulic brake you were running before. There's just now a sensor that reads how that brake is reacting. So maybe I misunderstood your question, Tani, but I don't think going to ABS is like riding a wireless brake.
Like, what is it? What is the mode of failure?
You definitely still have a brake line with the current ABS brakes. But somewhere along the line, the ability for that to work is being interrupted by some sort of system.
Right.
But it depends on how you design the system to fail.
Right.
Right. Does it fail open or close or whatever?
Right. Does it fail so that when it fails, it just turns it into a normal brake? Then I think that's
Right.
hopefully the mode.
Right.
Actually, I'm sorry, I haven't thought that closely about this ABS system, but it's kind of blowing my mind thinking about how it does work and reads the rotor moving and your traction. And if it does stop working, it's like, anyways, sorry.
And it's maximizing the slowdown.
And does it work like other anti-lock brakes where it creates like a pulsing braking effect?
That was kind of my understanding of it, but that might have just been me projecting what I know about ABS and other vehicles onto the system.
I kind of picked up that Brian seemed to say it did, but we didn't get like real clarity, I don't think.
He was mostly tantalizing us with it. He wasn't really divulging a bunch of cool industry secrets. He was like, you guys are going to want to check this out. And we're like, okay, can you show it to us? And it wasn't, he didn't have it with him.
I'm in.
You're in for ABS?
I am in for ABS.
Is that stuff available? It's available now or no? It's just like prototypes.
I honestly don't know. Don't quote me on it, you guys. I don't think it's available now. I saw Hans Ray riding it, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was doing like showing how he could
Nose wheelie.
Exactly. There's like multiple different settings you can use, like a
Right.
pro setting, a trail setting, and something else. And he was showing how those affected his ability to nose wheelie down a grass hill. But I want to say that the ABS stuff has maybe been present in Bosch's other markets. We're so mountain bike focused, but Bosch is a huge player in the cargo e-bikes and other commuter e-bikes. And I find maybe before Brian was in the back touting how cool it was for mountain bikes, I kind of thought this is a solution for riders who aren't necessarily enthusiasts, but are carrying speed and weight on a cargo e-bike in an urban environment and may not have the practice to use their brakes in a way that a skilled rider or mountain bike rider might. And this is a Band-Aid for them to have safe control of their product in a variety of environments. That may already exist.
It does. According to AI, it does. You're right. According to AI, you're right.
When I was in Santa Monica, the shop I was at was also a huge commuter bike shop, and they sold lots of Urban Aero cargo bikes, like a cool Bach Feets basket in the front. And that kind of stuff is always talked about on those kind of bikes, because you put, a family of 4 on that bike, all of a sudden they've got a 500-pound rig that they're not slowing down very carefully. So being able to have more control for I don't want to say beginner, but just for a more casual rider makes a big difference.
Yeah. And I think the sort of on-off dynamic of concrete traction or pavement traction adds maybe not a bigger element of danger to loss of traction, but definitely a different element of danger, because there's the moment when you get traction again is a lot of times when you crash too.
Right, your high side net or whatever.
Yeah. Interesting times to be a mountain biker. All right, Ak, you got anything else for Drew?
No. This has been a great pleasure, Drew. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. Let's we do it again.
Heck yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Let's remember to love the bike we ride.